Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for tuning in here on Friday, March 14th. Good morning to y'all. Happy weekend, almost. So the Jaguars had their free agency press conferences yesterday. Several of the new players met with the media, but the most important takeaways that I was looking for was really from what James Gladstone, the Jaguars general manager, had to say about their plan, about some of the players they brought in, why they brought them in, why they valued what they did. It was good to hear from the players. I think they're all very excited to be here, obviously. And each of them brings a different personality and skill set, certainly. But I want to offer the takeaways really from what James Gladstone had to say. His first post free agency press conference with the Jacksonville Jaguars as a GM in general, right? So we're going to offer some takeaways here. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. So there were some common refrains that we've heard from Gladstone and company: raising the floor, finding intangibly rich players, leveling up the ecosystem. All those can continue to be consistent through lines for this organization. So none of that was a big surprise. And really not a lot of what Gladstone had to say was a surprise for me. It was good to hear some certain different things. It was clear based on what the Jaguars did, signing the 9 players that they did. And they did go 9 of 9 on the players that they wanted, according to James Gladstone. There were 9 guys they were trying to sign, and they signed all 9 of them. The Jaguars clearly wanted experience, versatility, guys that had strain, like they strain throughout the play, they finish through the whistle, and they play with an attitude. And they wanted some guys also that kind of speak the language, could help with the transition from the past regime to the new regime, and help, from a schematic standpoint, understanding the offense, understanding the language of the offense. I think more so on the offensive side of the ball. But looking at some of the individuals they signed and kind of what James Gladstone thought about them, Jordan Lewis, as I said, is not a slot-only type of player. He played his entire rookie year outside. He has had to fill in outside several times throughout his career. He is a really good slot player. I don't think the Jaguars would have signed him if they thought he was a slot only. I think, and James Gladstone said as much, they think he can play outside. They think Jarian can play outside. They wanted to get Jordan Lewis in the building, and they're going to figure out how the puzzle pieces fit together with Jordan Lewis and Jarian Jones. I think that they like both of these guys a lot, and it's actually cool. Jordan Lewis was talking about it. He and Jarian already trained together, so they have good familiarity with each other, and now Jordan just needs to get kind of on the same page with Tyson Campbell, and I think you can have a top 3 corners that you feel pretty good about. Now, does that mean they're not going to address corner in the draft? Personally, I would expect that they do, because as I've said throughout this week, each of these players, a lot of them on 3-year deals or less, there were no 4-year deals. I don't think that they expect this group to be the long-term foundation of the franchise. They expect this group to be somewhat foundational this year, but to be glue pieces, to be guys that, the 5 starters that they brought in: Jordan Lewis, Eric Murray, De'Ami Brown, who will be a top 3 receiver for them, Robert Hainsey, and Patrick McCarry, guys that can help get them through this transition period, right? And I think Jordan Lewis, again, not a slot only, but could he be the primary slot guy with Jarian outside? Yes. Could Jarian be the primary slot guy with Jordan Lewis outside? Yes. Could they switch based on matchup, based on situation? Yes. So I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch throughout the offseason, training camp, into the season. And Gladstone also said that Jordan Lewis brings a level of doggedness out there, which that might be a new one for me, a new term for me. But obviously, he's got that dog in him. He likes to talk a lot of trash. He is high energy, high effort. And so I think the attitude that he brings to the football field is kind of a big part of the signing there, certainly. And he's a good football player. There's no question about it. Looking at the offensive linemen that they signed, Robert Hainsey, Patrick McCarry, Chuma Edoga, talked about playing through the whistle, talked about, again, the attitude that they will bring to the offensive line. And Robert Hainsey projects as the starting center right now. Patrick McCarry projects as the starting right guard right now. Those 2 guys, McCarry doesn't have any personal connection with this playbook with this kind of offensive scheme, but he's a guy that has a ton of versatility. I think that they really valued that. If anything goes wrong with injury wise, they can, potentially take Makari and plug him in somewhere else and feel comfortable that he'll be able to get the job done there. And then I think that they need to continue to fill out the depth. James Gladstone said, this does not in any way eliminate offensive line from the draft talk. So I think you're probably going to see offensive line coming in the draft as well, even though they signed 3 free agents. Robert Hainsey comes from Tampa, worked with Liam Cohen last year, speaks the language offensively. They believe that his understanding of the offense will really aid Trevor Lawrence at the line of scrimmage, and them growing together throughout the offseason will be a big thing for Trevor transitioning into a new offense, another new offense, right? It will be a big help to have Robert Hainsey, who actually has a lot of experience in this offense. And they also mentioned how they loved when he had his opportunity to start last year against the Saints, his only opportunity after Graham Barton. They selected Barton in the first round to be their starting center. And so Barton was obviously the starter last year, but Hainsey had the opportunity to get in there at center and had a hell of a game against the Saints. So that was a big selling point, his ability to take advantage of the opportunity there as well. Gladstone, talking about Eric Murray, said, the core word in the word safety is safe, and they feel very safe with Eric Murray out there on the football field. I think that he does a good job being versatile, which is, again, another guy that has a lot of versatility, but also I think that he sees the game right. I think he can understand coaching well. I think that there's just not as many busted coverages on tape with Eric Murray as there were with some of the guys that were on the field over the last couple years, year and a half, really, where the Jaguars defense kind of fell apart from a just execution standpoint. And that was with 2 different coaching staffs defensively. Now, De'Ami Brown, vertical playing and quick game they talked about for him. They really think that he can build on that late season surge that he had into the playoffs with the Washington Commanders. That's the expectation. And De'Ami Brown, that's what I've been talking about all week. Like, he can stretch you vertically down the field, which can help open up Brian Thomas Jr. on shorter and intermediate routes and deep down the field as well. I mean, you can get both of those guys going down the field at the same time. And they think that he can really help in that quick screen game. He did a lot of that last year with the Commanders. So that kind of fits to a T, I think, what Liam Cohen's going to want to do a lot with these guys. And one thing you heard from Robert Hainsey, and you've heard it consistently from a lot of people that have been around Liam Cohen, this offense is going to adjust to what the players do well. They ended up becoming in Tampa last year a gap power offense, right? That was not the plan coming in, but it started working on tape when they would do it. And so they kept doing it more, and eventually it became their identity offensively. So Liam Cohen is not going to be dogmatic. He's not going to say, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, and we're not going to change at all. If something works with this group, like, again, more of a vertical passing attack, deep down the field, I think that they can build on that and execute it at a high level. And I think with Brown's speed, with Brian Thomas Jr.'s speed, they can kind of become a big play or quick play offense. And I like that a lot. The tight ends, both of them have the connection with the coaching staff. Johnny Munt was in LA and with Minnesota. Obviously, the Jaguars have Minnesota, Grant Udinski, offensive coordinator, and they also, Liam Cohen and a lot of these guys go back to LA. So the tight ends are both plus blockers without being negatives in the pass game. I think that that's a big deal. They think that they can have some multiplicity, some balance when those 2 guys that they signed are on the field, Johnny Munt and Hunter Long. And they also feel really strongly about Brenton Strange, saying that he embodies what they're looking for. His arrow is clearly pointing up. They're excited about that group that they have. They got the backup quarterback, Nick Mullins from Minnesota, and he might not even be a guy that you're trying to trot out there, but just somebody who's going to be a boon, a plus, a positive for the room, for Trevor Lawrence, for him growing and understanding this offense. He's been with Grant Udinski for the last 3 years, so I think that's going to be a big deal. Again, another guy who knows the language So you look at a lot of the offensive additions, you've got a center who understands the language. That's going to be somebody who's directly working with Trevor Lawrence a lot. You've got the two tight ends who understand the offense, and then you've also got the backup quarterback. So that's a lot of insulation, a lot of people that are really going to be able to help teach Trevor Lawrence and help him grow throughout this offseason in this offense. I think that's a big deal. I think they've built their roster with guys who can start for them. Again, 5 guys, and they feel like they aren't pigeonholed at any point in the draft to take a specific position. We'll see what ends up happening there. I still think that if you look at the roster, it's kind of pointing to a interior defensive lineman early on in the draft. I think it's pointing to a receiver early on in the draft. Those would be 2 positions I expect to be filled in the first 2 days of the draft without question. And then obviously everybody's still talking about Cooper Kupp. I think he's supposed to make his decision today. You've heard him linked to Seattle. You've heard him linked to Dallas as well. Haven't heard the Jaguars pop up. James Gladstone was asked about it, obviously said everything is on the table, but his last statement was really kind of about, at this point now, letting the rookies come in, and you don't want any more veterans to get in the way of that. So if I had to guess, I think they're going to take a receiver probably in the first 3 rounds. And I know I did a mock draft earlier this week where they didn't get one till round 4. That's kind of been their MO. They've really kind of valued the trenches earlier on in the draft. The Rams have. And James Gladstone was a big part of that the last few years. So maybe they do go receiver earlier. Maybe you wait till the 3rd round, the 4th round. We'll see how it plays out. But I think that they will address the receiver position with someone that they feel can come in and contribute right away in the draft. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Y'all have a good one.